those feelings do come more and more often, and they come, stronger and stronger the more I practice it. So I always think about it this way. I mean, if I'm looking for something to be a certain kind of way, I will find it, for better or for worse, right? If I'm looking for how my kids are acting up, I'm going to find all the ways they're acting up, and then I'm going to get angry. If I'm looking for all the ways that I'm blessed, I'm going to be surrounded by blessings.
Welcome to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. I am your host, Chad Hufford, and this is the podcast where we celebrate the unsung heroes of the working world. Each week, we dive into the incredible stories of honest, hardworking folks who have found financial success through grit, determination, and good old-fashioned elbow grease. So if you're ready to be inspired and learn how to turn your hard work into your own success story, you're in the right place. This is the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. All right, well, welcome back. Another episode of Blue Collar Millionaire Show here with Logan again. And we're going to talk a little bit about gratitude and the importance of that, just not just for the benefit of the people around us, but just personally and how impactful that can be. So gratitude, you said before we started, are you for it or against it? I'm for it. How about you?
I am also for it. End of podcast. No, but seriously, like we talk about this a lot personally, just as brothers. We talk about it a lot in office, but if anybody's listening and like, not sure how this fits in, like we talk about a lot of topics, but how does this fit in with a wealth management firm? How would you answer that?
Well, first of all, I think we have to evaluate, not to get too philosophical, but like, what is gratitude? Because I think a lot of people think of it as a feeling.
No, it's actually, that's one thing I have on here. Okay. Touch on, yeah.
So I will answer your question, but let me first kind of give my premise, I guess, is I see gratitude more of a discipline, as a commitment. And here's why this is important. Because the tendency is, if I view gratitude as a feeling or an emotion, which it can be, don't get me wrong, it can be, but the tendency is for people to think, when I have something to be grateful for, then I'll be grateful. If we think of it like a discipline, and our audience can be surprised when we use a fitness analogy here, think like working out. And it is something you strengthen. It is a muscle you strengthen by using it. And to say, I will be grateful when I have more to be thankful for, is kind of like saying, I will go to the gym once I get stronger. No. You go to you lift weights to get stronger, right? And you build that muscle. So gratitude it is something you practice. It is maybe an action you take, but it is certainly a practice you involve in, and then the feelings come.
Right.
And sometimes you might just get hit with a wave of gratitude. That's awesome. But the feeling of that is kind of like motivation. It's very fleeting. It's very fickle. And if you rely on that feeling, then you won't be living in a state of gratitude very often. You'll get little pieces and parts of it. I would not consider myself a very motivated person. I'm ambitious, but a lot of times I'm doing things in spite of how I feel in the moment. So how does that lean into financial planning? Well, number one, financial planning is based on your ability to live within your means. And the reason I say that is, it doesn't matter how good your investment plan is.
Literally spending less than you make.
Yep. If you can't do that, nothing that we do here matters, because it doesn't matter how good your portfolio is if you can't feed it. So if you max out your credit cards, max out your budget, there's nothing there to pay your future self. So there is no financial plan,
right?
Because there is no ability to fund it. So you have to live within your means, which requires amount of contentment. The other part of this too is we want people to get to some place of financial freedom. Not necessarily that they retire, quit their job, whatever, but they get to a place where they no longer require a paycheck to maintain their lifestyle. We call that a job optional lifestyle. But if you're used to living off of 100% of what you make, then you need to replace 100% of what you make to be financially independent, to have a job optional lifestyle. If you can create a margin, 10, 20, 30% between what you bring home and what you actually live off of, not only is there a margin that you can use to pay your future self and be generous with others, but you also don't have to replace 100%. So that's why it's so critical. And contentment comes from gratitude. Greed comes from focusing on what everybody else has.
Right.
Gratitude and contentment comes from focusing on what is already in your life, the blessings you already have. With that, you can start building a margin between what you take home and what you live off of. So when you are living in a state of discontentment, you're probably living in a state of ingratitude. Just simply laying that out there. And when you're discontent, you're probably not going to have a lot of margin.
Yeah. And yeah, one of the first thing I was going to touch on is, gratitude is a skill. It's not a mood. It's not a feeling. And like you said, you can have a feeling of being grateful. But the beautiful part too, if anybody hasn't tried to, instill this muscle, this skill of gratitude, those feelings do come more and more often, and they come, stronger and stronger the more I practice it. So I always think about it this way. I mean, it's, if I'm looking for something to be a certain kind of way, I will find it, for better or for worse, right? If I'm looking for how my kids are acting up, I'm going to find all the ways they're acting up, and then I'm going to get angry. If I'm looking for all the ways that I'm blessed, I'm going to be surrounded by blessings. And that sounds like, okay, that's up in the clouds. No, like that. Sometimes that's the difference between, I just want to like cry on my pillow because things are rough and everyone's, sick and we got this, that, and the other, and another appliance broken. Man, I'm surrounded by blessings.
So it's funny you say that, because this is something that just happened this morning. So every morning, again, I believe discipline, or at least it's a practice. Gratitude is a practice. So every morning I read out a gratitude list. I'm trying to remember what it was this morning.
Every morning you write it or read it?
Every morning I write one.
Okay.
So it's three things. One is usually from some reading that I did earlier that morning.
Okay.
And then the two are those just random. Sometimes they're really deep and philosophical. And so, today, one of my things was Michigan winning last night against a very good Auburn team. They beat them by like 40 points. Best I've ever seen Michigan play in like several years. Anyways, so I'm grateful for Michigan, grateful for Dusty May, Michigan's coach. That was one of my things. Not super like spiritual or intellectual, but I was. One of the other things is out of what I was reading, is that we can find perfect peace and rest in God. Like that is my belief that is where rest truly comes from, which I think can tie into gratitude and contentment as well.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember what the third one was. But anyways, here's what I'm going with this is, so I do that, did a little bit of work from home, and then went to the gym. And I couldn't find my lock to the gym, or to the locker. And I'm a little frustrated, and I'm just thinking, I gotta go buy a new one. I'm not gonna leave and I'm just gonna do my workout. I hope nobody steals my bag. And then I found it. And I was just like, and that could have been just like such a minor thing. Yeah. I was like, I am so thankful. Because now in the back of my head, I don't have to worry. I can focus on my workout. I don't have to worry about what's happening in my bag. It's a little $3 padlock, nothing special. But I think it primed me for being grateful for some of those other things. And it's like what you look for. If you look for disappointment, you will find it. Guaranteed. There's tons of disappointment. Yeah. And you will miss the blessings. And if you practice gratitude, you will more and more notice the blessings that are already in your life. And it's easier to either ignore what everybody else has, and it's also, I think, easier to ignore the frustrations, or at least take the edge off them.
Yeah. And if anybody still is like not quite sure how well this connects, I promise you, every week, maybe every day for you, we hear people say things like, something in the economy, something political, something at their job, something with their family, something's not quite going right.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are, and I've struggled with this at times too, but some people go through their day and they're going to pick apart, without even trying, all the things that are not just exactly the way that they would prescribe it. And they truly do believe in their heart, like they're a victim, like things have not been working out, and they're just not happening in a good way. and that's a really dark place to be in. Like, this is not a small thing. And this does, I mean, it affects your finances, it affects your career, it affects family. I mean, one of the things Carrie and I say often to each other, and it's usually with a little bit of a chuckle, but I really cherish it, is like, if I'm at work, I come home, or one of us is gone out of town or something. It's like, man, I missed you so much. I like that I missed you so much, because I don't ever want to lose that. I don't. I want to be. I'm grateful for the fact that I hate not being with my family. And as much as possible, I want to find other areas of life to be that way, right? Where I'm like, dang, I am so thankful that I'm a little bummed out that, the furnace isn't working, because that means I've got a furnace. That means I've got a roof over my head.
I think what you said is also critical too, because usually with every frustration, there's a blessing on the other side of it. So one of the things that we've been frustrated by this last month is our refrigerator stopped working. And we had dumped a bunch of money into it last year, and now it's like, it just feels like we're throwing good money after bad. So the old sunk cost thing. Maybe we'll talk about that someday. But
and God gave you 15 degrees outside just for you.
That's exactly what we talked about, though. It's like, it's good that it happened in the winter, because now we have coolers out on our deck. We just go back and forth to that. Yeah. So that'd be interesting, hosting Thanksgiving tomorrow with that, because this is when we're recording this day before Thanksgiving, time of gratitude. But so it'll be interesting. There's a lot that gets lost, and we find things frozen. Like, I can't, this lettuce isn't going to be any good anymore. But what used to be, or what often is, a frustration of mine, the cold, actually is a blessing now, because it's allowed us to be able to keep food cold in coolers sitting outside. So I think, like you said, missing your family. This could be on a trip. Like, oh man, I really, really wish I'd be with my family. Well, praise God that we have kids and a wife that we miss while we're gone. On the other side of almost frustration is a huge blessing.
Yeah. So one thing I did want to talk about, and I legitimately, I want to hear your thoughts on this, turning back the clock a little bit. So the idea of gratitude in lean seasons, that's a very different, it's connected obviously, but that's a different thing than, things are going pretty well overall, but your fridge went out. Turning back the clock, whether it be 15 years ago, 20 years ago, do you remember what your mindset was like? And was it maybe not a very grateful mindset? Were you in a pretty unhealthy place in that way?
I wish I could go back and talk to myself 15, 20 years ago.
Paint the picture just a little bit. What was 15 or 20 years
ago? So Veritas started 18 years ago, as of just a couple weeks, like a couple weeks ago, was the 18th anniversary. And that was right at the beginning of the Great Recession. So here I was, young kid, a few years removed from college, with a degree in biochemistry, a baby on the way, starting a financial planning business during the worst financial time since the Great Depression. And the way that I got started, I was encouraged to be very picky with who I worked with, and almost everybody from those early days is still with me today, because they're awesome, tremendous people. I mean, awesome, just salt of the earth people, high character, highly ethical, fantastic clients. But at the time, even though I was being very picky, that also meant that I was taking on very few people. And some of that was just because people didn't want to work with a 28-year-old kid with a biochem degree in the midst of a financial crisis. And it was very, very hard to start. We started with no debt. I didn't want to take on any loans. I also wasn't sure I was going to make it, to be honest. And I remember one of the toughest days was actually going through the University of Alaska, where some of our very early clients came from. And I was just dropping off just kind of a introduction letter to some of the folks over there. And one of my old professors saw me. He said, "What are you doing here?" And I explained to him what I was doing that day. And he said, No. What are you doing here? You should be in medical school, if not in residency right now. You are wasting your life. and all the talents that you've been given. And he actually was a very, very polished lecturer, but not a great communicator. And I knew him well enough to know, and he was a professor at the Whammy School of Medicine.
Okay.
So he was somebody who knew exactly what he was talking about, but I knew him well enough to know that he didn't mean that to disparage me.
Cared about you.
He cared about me. He was said out of love, and it was crushing because I wondered if he was right. And I didn't know that at the time, but looking back at it now, I was suffering from depression, certainly through a period, and it was punctuated at different points. But I did have some of the things I was grateful for, though, at that time. I mean, number one was when Tiff and I got married, we got rid of all of our debt. So there's some medical bills from that Tiff actually had before the marriage, and then she had some things right after, some emergency room visits, and just grateful that we got that stuff eradicated when we did. We could have drug it out. We were super intense, getting all that stuff paid off in the first year of marriage. God really blessed us in that. If that hadn't happened, or if we drug it out, carried any debt into I don't think Veritas would have survived. I was, I think, grateful, even though it hurt in the moment, hearing somebody who knew me well and knew what I could have been on that different path say that. In the back of my mind, I had that. I was like, if this, it is not bad to have medicine as a fallback,
right?
Knowing that, and this guy was actually, he'd written letters to other medical schools. Letters of recommendation. I had people that were willing to go to bat for me. I had a family that loved me and supported me. Tiff never, there was definitely huge struggles, but never, I don't ever remember a conversation. She's like, why don't you go back to this or go do that? I think she was able to maybe not see the other side, but know that there was something better on the other side, even if we couldn't see it. When there were some pretty dark days where I really was wondering, is this all going to be worth it? So there's just a few things, but I wish I could have gone back and had some of these discussions, because I think there were times where I felt like, yeah, gratitude is something that I have when I have enough. And I really didn't feel like that a lot. I was struggling as a father and a husband. For people who don't know, my wife grew up in some pretty significant poverty. And there was that devil on my shoulder telling me, you married her promising to take her out of this, and here she is back in it. And man, that hurts even talking about it now, to be honest. But I still have my faith, and we started our family in the midst of all this too. Worst time to start a business on so many levels, but having a family that I knew still loved me, despite all those struggles.
And I'll just say, so you said Tiff was pregnant with your oldest.
Yeah,
when Veritas started.
We were waiting. Yeah,
Raylan was on the way.
She was on the way,
and so that little baby is now our receptionist out front.
Yep,
it's pretty cool.
Yep.
And a quick little segue before we wrap up. I did want to ask, how do you instill gratitude as a dad in your kids? How do you work that into the culture of your home? What does that look like for you?
Well, one of the things I do, I already mentioned the gratitude list. So I actually put that on the table in our dining room.
Okay.
Part of it is for me. I want to spend my time early in the day. It's usually, before 7 a.m, I'm doing this list. So I'm literally trying to start my day off with gratitude. And I'm pulling some of that out of what I've read. So this is a practice, a discipline. These are habits. It's a commitment that I've done, but I also want my kids to see that. I want to see what's going on in their dad's life. Sometimes it's a removal of a challenge. I got pretty sick coming back from our vacation. And 3 or 4 days ago was the first time in since early October that I woke up without a sore throat. It was 6 weeks or 9 or 7 weeks of that, and just I was like, oh, this is nice. So, I want them to know what's going on. I want them to know what I'm struggling with, but also just to show them too that this is a practice that they can do too. So even if they're not doing their own, they can at least see what dad is grateful for. One of the other things that we try to do is allow them to experience hardship, things that we could kind of rescue them from. And we're still trying to find that balance. I am a little bit, my proclivity is more towards like, this is Sparta. And my wife is more like, no, they don't need to struggle with that. So I think we're a good balance for each other, but allowing them to feel the struggle, because then you experience the blessings more.
Yeah.
Was it, I think it was Tupac that said something about you don't love the sunshine until you've been through the rain, kind of a thing. He said it a little differently.
So we're just over a year in, and we got our first Tupac reference on the pod. That's
good. Man, yeah. This wise man, but made some bad choices. Anyway, but those are some of the things. But just talking about that on a regular basis. One more thing, and then as one other thing that popped in my head, I want to mention that's separate from your question, but asking the kids at night, what was your favorite thing about today?
Yeah.
And what are you most looking forward to about tomorrow? Because it does two things. Number one, even if it was a really lousy day, you're looking for, what was that one bright spot?
Yeah.
Maybe you wrecked your car, maybe you failed a class, maybe whatever, maybe you're sick, but find one bright spot.
Yep.
And then what is the one thing you're most looking forward to tomorrow? It prompts them, not just thinking about, okay, think of something positive might happen tomorrow, but it prompts them to be looking to that next day, waiting and watching for something good to happen.
Yep.
Because again, I do think it's a habit. So those are a few things. The other thing I just want to mention, this is something I was kind of thinking of when you mentioned, what were some things you were grateful for 15 years, to give people more context, 15, 20 years ago, what was going on in your life? And, I think in some ways, contentment is often what you have divided by what you think you need. And what a lot of people do is they work on the numerator.
Which means what?
The top part of the equation. So if you think of like 1/2.
If I have more, I'll be more.
The fraction 1/2 is 1 divided by 2. 1 is the numerator, 2 is the denominator. Your numerator is what you have.
Okay.
And if you look at that, people who have contentment, there's a large positive number there between that equation. But I think what a lot of people do is try to work on the numerator, work on the top part, what I have. I'm going to increase what I have. The more I have, the higher that equation, the higher that number works.
Yeah.
What I have divided by what I think I need. But I think for most of us, we'd be better served to work on the denominator, making that smaller, not making the numerator larger, making the denominator smaller. Because we can still come up with a big number. If our numerator especially becomes a fraction, 2 divided by a really, really small number, like 0.000002, is actually a huge number.
So in a different conversation, we talked about the best time to be alive. And I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about, right? Like if I can think about, on a rough day, we had an appliance break, and we're having car issues, and we're all sick, and all these different things. And we have heat in the house while it's 0 degrees outside, and I've got my wife, I've got my kids, I've got salvation. I mean, people say it, but like, I'm a really, really rich man. That's what you're talking about, right?
You're shrinking the denominator. You're reducing the denominator. So what you have gets magnified.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Rather than increasing, with a large denominator, it divides what you have. But again, most people, I think, they're working on their numerator. They're working on, should probably use less math verbiage here, but they're working on trying to increase what they have rather than decreasing what they think that they need. And if you can do both simultaneously, that's awesome. But for some people, it's harder. And what also happens, and then I'll throw this back to you, but if you are only working on the top part of the equation, on the numerator, the denominator usually increases too. And we call it lifestyle creep. But the more we have, typically the more we think we want or need. And then you don't really get any happiness. Even someone with a huge bonus,
right,
to get a major bonus, 10 grand or something like that. Like, that'd be awesome for a day, a week. 6 months from now, their happiness probably, their contentment probably has not changed at all. It could even be worse.
Right. And I have very much felt that. And I don't have to think that far back in my history when I was in the car business. I mean, that was one of the many, many reasons why it was such a terrible environment for me. But it's just like, yeah, if I could have a bigger SUV for Carrie, you know, or a newer van, or if our house could be a bit bigger, if we could have this type of playroom for the kids, like, not that those are bad things to desire, but I very much felt that way. I remember we've always loved looking at houses, just driving around looking at houses, just fun. But I used to not be able to do that in a healthy way. Like, for years I couldn't do that because it was just so hard for me to look at a cool house and not go, I can't have that. I can't have as good of a house as that. I can't have as good of a place for my family, which again is like, that's no small thing. So it's been a gigantic thing over these last 5+ years to be able to go, yeah, that's a beautiful house. That's got a really cool, you know, whatever. And maybe one day we could have something like that, but I don't have to have that to be happy, which is a much better place to be.
I think in my own life, there are areas where I have to be really careful that I don't spend too much time in, because then it does come down to a comparison.
Yeah.
And even if it's something that I could have, but I don't need, it's like, I was just telling somebody this the other day, like I usually don't bring a credit card into Cabela's with me because, number one, because Dave would not want me using Dave Ramsey would not want me to use a credit card. But
in case you bump into him.
Yeah, in case he's there. He likes guns too, but yeah, you see stuff you didn't know that you needed. You know, it's like, oh, I didn't know that existed. That's cool. So there are areas in my life where I have to be very, very careful about boundaries, basically, with myself, because it's just human nature.
Yeah,
it's just human nature. And I think on the other side of that, though, I think contentment or gratitude is the default state when we can remove our desires, when we can remove our cravings. If we remove that stuff, our default state could be much, much happier. But again, you've got to reduce the denominator.
Yeah. Well, the parting words I'll just say is to try to encourage anybody listening, going back to that, you know, some folks call it the lighthouse principle, but whatever I spend energy looking for, I will at some point find it. And obviously we spent most of this time talking about gratitude. It applies to everything, I promise you. We got to be really careful. What are we focusing our energy on? What are we focusing our eyes on? Because we're going to find it, for good or for bad. You know, right now you're probably listening to this around the holidays. Maybe it's Christmas Day. You're probably not listening to this on Christmas Day, but enjoy all those incredible blessings that you've got. And thank you for joining us. This is probably the last time you're ever going to hear about Tupac or numerators on this podcast. I'm just going to encourage you.
No promises.
Okay,
no
but
promises.
Maybe. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. We hope this episode has been inspiring and beneficial to you. If you want help on your journey to financial freedom, reach out to us at veritasalaska.com. We'd love to sit down over a cup of coffee with you, either here in our office or virtually, and get to know you and your needs. And though this podcast is free of charge, we do ask that you please do us 2 quick favors. If you enjoyed the episode, give our pod a great rating on iTunes or whatever podcast platform you use, and also give us a follow on Instagram. We hope you have a wonderful day filled with gratitude and intentionality. God bless.